This right here is DJI's Osmo Action 6. It's their newest and baddest action camera on the market that's supposed to be a solid upgrade over this, the Action 5 Pro from last year. But the question is, do these yearly releases really justify buying a new action camera every 12 months? Let's find out. Now, it's worth pointing out that DJI did send me this camera and they sent me some equipment to go with it so that I could show it all to you. But I'm not gonna be reviewing this camera per se because I'm a little bit late to the review game this time around. Most of the reviews are in and they're saying that this is a solid camera. But again, the question isn't, is it good? It's, is it good enough to justify buying a whole other action camera? So I'm gonna show you some side-by-sides, I'm gonna show you the mods, I'm gonna show you what you can do with this thing, and I'll let you make that decision for yourself. The link is down in the description below if you do wanna check this thing out. And we're gonna dive in with one of the things that I noticed right away when I unboxed this thing. First and foremost, take a look at these side by side. Notice anything? The lens cover is actually slightly bigger on the 6, and the camera body itself is a little bit bigger than the old Action 5. That means if you're anything like me and you're invested into your action cameras and you use stuff like ND filters or different lenses that you may put on this thing, you need to buy a whole new set, and that includes DJI's boost lens, which you have to get a separate one specifically for the 6. Now, while any lenses that you may have may not swap between these two cameras, the batteries do, and you can still connect to these wireless mics just the same way. I even use the same wired setup going right there into the side of the camera. I do think that's something worth shouting out though, because if you're like me and you do use ND filters, you do have to build that into the price of the camera. It's no longer a $380 camera, it's north of 400 bucks. And then one of the reasons why it took me so long to make this video is because I had to wait a pretty long time for these screw-on filters to come out. DJI does offer press-on filters, but if you're somebody like me riding around on a big, fast motorcycles and you're taking your helmet on and off all day, you don't want that filter to fall off because it means that your shot is going to overexpose. These aren't going anywhere, and they're also going to maintain the waterproofing, so these are much better options. I also think that the pricing is about the same between the K&F screw-on filters and the DJI ones. I'll have them on screen for you. So that means that there's an additional expense if you want to upgrade from camera to camera. So the question is, what do you get out of it? Well, there are three big features that I can shout out right here. First and foremost, this has a bigger 1/1.1 inch square sensor. It also, for the first time that I'm aware of on an action camera, has variable aperture. And then third, you can see that bigger white balance sensor right here versus the little one in the O of the Action 5 right here. Theoretically, that means that the Action 6 has better image quality. It also should have better low light performance as well as better color balance, but you're looking at the footage right now, so I'll let you decide. It is worth pointing out that both of these cameras are using the exact same settings whenever you see a side-by-side. I'm also using the D-Log color profile, which is actually the one I'm using on my Pocket 3 right now. It just allows me to color grade all the footage the way that I would want to. Now, I want to take a second and focus on what I think is probably the system seller, the reason why you may want to upgrade to this camera over your other one, and that is the square shooting mode, which allows you to do something you've never been able to do on an action camera before, to my knowledge.
By using this lens mod paired up with the square shooting mode, what I'm able to do is take the raw footage off this camera and shape it both in a horizontal and a vertical shot, getting both YouTube Shorts and YouTube long form content at the exact same time with one piece of equipment. This is a massive time saver when it comes to workflow. However, it doesn't quite work for me because I can't put an ND filter on this, which means that I have to run this on its auto exposure settings. That's a bit of a bummer, but it's a very specific problem. I'd reckon most folks, they're not going to encounter this issue.
If you want to get the best performance out of this mode, you do need this, which is DJI's wide angle lens. That's gonna fix a weird problem that happens with the square shooting mode. Without it, it can tend to feel just a little bit weirdly enclosed, a little too narrow. They have fixed it with a firmware update slightly. It's not quite where it needs to be, and that's why you're gonna need this thing. The next reason you may wanna consider upgrading to this camera is because they have this now, which is a macro lens that looks something like this. And this is the Osmo Action 6 using the macro lens, which finally adds that soft depth of field to objects in the background. This has me super excited because it means that this camera right here is going to look a lot closer to something like the more expensive and much more complicated Pocket 3, allowing this camera here to potentially be a platform to film entire YouTube videos on, specifically when it comes to reviews and having to shoot B-roll. I'd like to see a more aggressive macro lens because you're seeing some side-by-side shots. And yes, the Pocket 3 does have a much softer depth of field than something like this does, but the fact that we have an action camera with a depth of field at all kind of blows my mind. We also have ND filters for it, which is something that I really need when I'm filming my B-roll. This is a feature that is not going to be called out by a lot of other motorcycle content creators because it's not something we think about when it comes to action cameras. We usually have a big camera that we film a lot of other stuff with, and then our action cameras are set up so that we can go moto vlog. But this feature right here is something you're definitely gonna wanna consider if you're wanting to do something a little bit more than just film your rides. I do wanna shout out two things real quick that are problems with the macro lens. First and foremost, it's big, it's heavy, so it adds a little bit of weight, especially when it's sitting on your chin. And then secondly, this is no longer waterproof, which means that I can't just leave this thing on. I actually have to switch to my standard lens cover instead of just going to the infinity distance on this and just filming normally. I can kind of get away with this here in Texas because we don't have rain. It doesn't exist down here. So yeah, but other people, it's worth bearing in mind. Now I do want to shout out battery life on both of these cameras because it is important, and I did my standard test where I set them both on 4K 30, the high bit rate, and filmed them until they died. The Action 6 lasted a little over 120 minutes, and the 5 Pro lasted a little over 130. I have a theory as to why this didn't last as long. I think that the new sensor is a little bit more power hungry than the old one, but again, 10 minutes, not a big deal across over 2 hours. Now let's get down to brass tacks here. I use these cameras just about every single day, and y'all probably don't. Right now on screen, you are looking at 3 side-by-sides shot on all 3 of these cameras at the same time. Let me know which one you think is which. Put it down below, and I'm gonna reveal it here in 3, 2, 1. Now here's that exact same setup except at night. Let me know which one you think is which, and yes, I have changed them around so they're not the same. Try and guess which one's which, put it down below, and then I will reveal it in 3, 2, 1. At night, it's a little bit more distinguishable which is which, but during the day, the gap between these cameras is actually pretty narrow. This is the point that I really wanted to make by putting all 3 of these cameras side by side. DJI has officially run into what I like to call the Cardo problem. This right here is my PackTalk Pro. It's Cardo's newest and best communicator, but the thing is, I still see people rocking the PackTalk Bold as well as the Slim, which they no longer make, which is a crying shame. Because those older Cardos were so good, what ends up happening is Cardo has a hard time selling these things. They rely on folks like me to make a video for you to say that, hey, you should pick this thing up because of this, that, and the other thing feature. But at the end of the day, if you're just listening to music on your bike and the PackTalk Bold is still working for you, why would you want to spend another $400 on a communicator? Sure, the PackTalk Pro has its auto off feature, it's got crash detection and some other quality of life improvements like longer battery life and all that good stuff. But we've reached the exact same place with these action cameras. Normally what I say when I encounter a situation like this is if you don't have an action camera already, you should run out and buy the newest one because it's the best. It's gonna have the most support for the longest period of time, whereas these older ones, they may get phased out. The problem with these yearly releases though is we have so much aftermarket support still available for these cameras, and you can still buy them super cheap. Like you can get the 4 for almost $200 in some places. and it shoots really, really well. Are these super user features awesome? Yes, they absolutely are. And if you are the kind of person who's going to use them, this is the only option for you. But otherwise, I really think DJI could stand to let the Action 6 run for a year or two and let more and more of the aftermarket catch up. For example, I would love a cinescope style lens that allows me to shoot an essentially 32:9. That would be really awesome because then I get these super cinematic wide shots and it allows me to play with some stuff. But by changing stuff year over year consistently, the aftermarket is scrambling to catch up. And they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot, I think. So that's where I've landed, right? This is the best action camera in my opinion. However, second place goes directly to this one. And it's a very close second. And then third place goes to this guy, and it's a very close third. That's why I wanted to do this one a little bit differently, because it really is going to come down to your use case, and it doesn't really make sense for you to spend the money on the biggest and baddest one if you're going to only use the features that are here, and they're still just as good today as they were 2 years ago. One last parting thought. Shade Tree Surgeon used to stockpile GoPro Hero 4s because he thought they were the best, and he built a bigger YouTube channel than most of us independent goons off of the back of a camera that was obsolete years ago.